Here we have a question, an interesting one, contemporary. All of them are anyhow, but this one is unusual in a sense. Is there a wholesome way to use AI, artificial intelligence? Basically, what could be some of the proper guidelines? Is there such a thing from a Buddhist perspective? Technology can never save us, really. That is, when we're not grounded in our humanity. That comes first. You can't put one before the other. In this case, the wheel before the ox. It doesn't work like that. Many, many people are making a lot of money by promoting AI. Yeah, it's the next big thing. It's the thing. If you're not in AI, then you've fallen behind. Forget it. You're lost. You're not going to prosper. You're not going to progress, at the very least, because it's going to take over everything. Some people have said it already has taken everything, flooded and all that. But we need to, really take a moment to reflect, ponder, because whenever you're fast forwarding your life, you're bound to make mistakes. And that's what happens with these people, with these promoters of AI, and because everybody's going to be making and is making money from it. So many deals are being made openly. Everyone sees this. Multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar, this and that, big numbers. Meanwhile, people are starving on the streets. People don't have homes. People don't have jobs that they're, been primed for doing. They have the knowledge, the capacity, the know-how. We don't, the people who are in charge of all these things, they don't have time to think about that. And what's also happening is the regular people, you have ChatGPT, etc. Obviously it started, and then you had, I think it was DeepSeek, and there's all kinds of different programs coming out. And I think from what I heard someone saying the other day, within ChatGPT there's different variations, different gradations, there's different ranking system as to which one's the best, which one is more efficient in this arena. Most people have the versions that are free. Well, there's also the one where the people purchase it and they can do so many different things with it. Okay, I'm not savvy with those technical stuff, but I'll try to do my best in addressing the question. So let's be reminded of the fact that technology can never replace decency or kindness, ethical and moral values. Technology cannot build for us or help us maintain, teach us what virtuous life is. Interesting, virtuous and virtual. AI can't teach us to be virtuous. At best, what it can do is you can tell it to, you can ask ChatGPT, hey, write me a poem on Sila. I think it can do a very good job at that. But where is this AI? What is this AI? First of all, it doesn't exist. Because just like the internet does not exist as a thing, so you can look at it as the way we look at a person, in a sense, an identity part of the person. where there isn't anything like that. So similarly, the internet is just a collection of networks working together. So we interpret that as a thing. Well, similarly with AI. So the AI is reaching over just like immeasurable, countless, infinite amounts of tentacles reaching everywhere, including into your own phone, into your own computer, whatever thoughts you're writing. If you're connected to the iCloud, for example, and you wrote a poem, guess what? AI is going to reach in and tap into that, unless you have some firewalls or some protection, some protective mechanisms. I don't know how you could do that, but and extract some data from here and there, and suddenly there you have a poem prepared for you about virtue, about sila. Okay. So it can be inspiring, don't get me wrong. So it can be helpful. But don't look for AI to be your savior, the way people are selling the whole idea, the whole concept. So wholesome. AI, just like technology, is not going to make us become more ethical. It's not designed for that. We, on the other hand, are. We have gone through countless eons of evolution as beings, now as people. So we have a lot of experience. Don't forget, AI is the product of the human mind. Okay? It's not a separate thing. So just like people creating this AI, writing the algorithms, writing the code for it, are not perfect, meaning they have faulty characters. In other words, many people are not virtuous, if not most people. They have ulterior motives. At the very least, people will put the dollar, the money, the euro, the whatever currency they want, the gold, above other values. So there's going to be compromise left and right. So don't be surprised if AI also starts lying to you. Okay? So, in other words, you have to, as a guideline, you can think of kusala and akusala, the same thing, the same two polarities with which you lead your life as a practitioner. Kusala, for those who don't know, is skillful, an action that is done with skillfully, something that brings about beauty. It brings about health, progress, good for you and for others, now and for future times. And then there's the akusala, which is the opposite of that. Akusala means unwholesome, unskillful, unwise action. So these two parameters, if you use them, if you apply them, you cannot go wrong, even when you're using AI. So I guess some people might have the question, well, can I use AI? Of course you can. But you have to ask yourself, why am I wanting to use it? Is it an objective that is going to help my life become easier? Okay, which is a valid question in a world where there's so many responsibilities being piled upon us, especially lay people living in a working world, etc., with various responsibilities. So it's highly understandable that individuals will want to, such as, let's say, a case where you need to sit down and write a report on something, but you just have snippets of what you want to write, because you know how to formulate it, but you know also work you can do, but you just don't have the time, or you're running out of time. But you have the ability, the effort, the knowledge, the know-how to do it, okay. I don't see anything wrong with sitting down and telling ChatGPT, for example, hey, make me this report, da-da-da-da-da, and you know. And then you're going to be giving it the final word. You're going to look at it because you're going to see sometimes mistakes that ChatGPT is doing. Okay. And you can correct it. So be the person who puts the final touch on it. But most importantly, I would say, so that you do not be breaking any precepts, is make sure you're able to do the work. Now, why do I say this? What you have today are people who want to get something for nothing. What I mean by that is, you have individuals writing entire books, and they don't know even how to write a single sentence, a single paragraph, or a single page. So what they do is they give the AI an idea, and they say, I want to cover this, this, and this, and they probably have a few books laying around. So they have some schema, in a sense, some structure, rough idea. And they might say, what's the biggest demographic of readers, what age group, da-da-da-da-da, and AI is great at that, statistics, all these things. And then make the book about 150 pages, 200 pages, whatever. Make it have this, make it target this audience, etc. And then it will do it for you. Lazy much? But you have, I can't even say thousands of people, I think there's more. Maybe millions of people already doing this. You have advertisements, I heard, about people advertising, oh, AI can make you money, you just have to do this, you know, buy my program, etc., etc., and then things like that. That is akusala, to my understanding. Because the person is unable to write the book. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the know-how. So in this case, AI is actually being, in other words, encouraged to go ahead and break the fourth precept, which is to lie. But in doing so, it's also breaking the second precept, which is to steal. Steal. But it's going to manipulate the information in such a way where it's going to be almost impossible to detect if there's any plagiarism involved. Okay? You have entire videos being done with AI. Movies are being done with AI. The voices of characters, actors, certain nuanced voices of very impactful, emotionally charged voices that induce a certain reaction from listeners, types of voices being created, generated by AI, that you probably will not have an easy time to hire such an actor or that actor because he's or she's already been dead and gone. But usually they don't want to pay such an actor. There was a time in the 90s and 2000s that, you know, in order for you to create a movie, like a feature, animation feature like Shrek when it first came out. I know these things because I was involved in such projects, not on that level, but you know, I was there during the premiere and you know, involved with the process of, well, what it takes to create an animation. So you have to have actual people who could draw. You have to first create the character. You have the screenwriters, you have, and then you have the character designers. Once the character designer, and that's so much work. You have to take, if you find the right character, you have to create a 3D from different angles, profile, front, back, etc. Really the back, how they would look like. And then the other designers would come in and animators would come in. So, and then you would have the in-betweeners. So the main animator will draw the extremes, dynamic postures, this and that. And then the in-betweeners, they were called, who would come in and they would draw the in-between. And you know also how to time it. So all that is gauged, is written clearly. So much work would go to create, you know, one single sheet of storyboard, okay? How to create that, to turn that into reality, let's say. Now, they don't have to do any of that. Okay. Graphic cards, this and that are so, like NVIDIA and others, now they are on such a incredible, undreamt of level, undreamt of since the 90s and 2000s, to the, you know, it was inconceivable what they're able to do now. Okay, when you're doing this with your main focus being to simply make money, irresponsible approach in how you're doing that, you're, for example, stealing other people's voices, famous people's voices, and let's say the actor cannot do anything about it, because they're not necessarily saying this is the actor's voice, but everyone knows it's his voice or her voice. You're stealing. Even though it's completely AI generated, you're stealing. So the intention is very important, because in a digital world, virtue or virtuous living need not become obsolete. Simply because we now have easier ways to do things, such as, you know, I was mentioning books that are being entirely written by AI. Now, I remember when I was in my 20s, in the 90s, I was shocked to hear that there are actual people, agencies, in fact, where you would pay, let's say, $5,000, anywhere, maybe even cheaper, to someone, and you just give them an idea, maybe snippets of your life, if it's going to be a biography, or about something that you like them to write about. And they will create a book, and your name would go there as the author. They're willingly giving up the authorship, basically, because that's how they make money. This was happening in the 90s, so this was like the old version of AI, I guess, even though it was done by humans. Now, but you had all these big names like politicians, celebrities, which, you know, they don't know how to put, how to wear their left shoe and how to tie their shoelaces. Somehow they're writing these incredibly intricately constructed, perfectly, the syntax and everything of a book. Wow. They never even seen the cover of their own book, Politicians, that's how they would write these books. They don't even know how to type on a Microsoft Word. Okay? Yeah, single finger keyboard users. But anyhow, that was also fraud. Okay, so AI can be used by a majority of people, and is being used in fraudulent manner. But it doesn't have to be AI to be fraudulent. People do it all the time. When you see your neighbor and you don't feel like, or you have something else going on in your mind, or something else is happening with your wife, with your boyfriend or something, and you're talking to them, and you're avoiding addressing the main issue. Okay? That's also fraudulent. You're not being truthful to yourself, first of all. And the other person is also feeling something's not right, but they also put a fake smile. And people put on fake smiles that can last decades. And then the relationship, falls apart 30 years later, ruining so many people's lives. So, AI has become all about money. In a world where learning various crafts, tools, or knowing how to survive in a harsh world and all such absolutely essential skills are being wiped out from our midst. Children don't know how to write. Can you imagine that? Go to major cities, children don't know how to write. I used to teach at a non-public school where we used to be as the last resort for kids before they were released into society, or we were also the last resort in the sense of they were going to go to correctional facilities like juvie, like juvenile hall. So these were children, some really children, others more juvenile, more a little bit like teenagers, but some of them would be excellent at doing graffiti with a spray can and all that, but you would give them a pencil, they didn't know how to write. They would know how to put a hole in someone else's body with it. So they were, some of them had, rough environments they came out of. So it was very challenging to work with them, but at the same time rewarding as well. But anyhow, when you have kids who can't write their name, and this is not just for that population, even like private schools, you go and people don't know how to write. You go anywhere in the world, people are more used to, typing with their, clicking with their thumbs, or swiping left and right, or up and down. We don't know how to use our fingers. We don't know how to use our hands. We have lost the skill of basically arts and crafts. We don't know. As a population, we are disconnected, in other words. And then all of a sudden we're presenting the new generation that has been drenched in video games, this and that, sedentary lifestyle. You have entire industries that just cater to video game chairs. I didn't know there's a category for that. Special chairs made specifically for video gamers. Computer mouse or mice, for extended periods of time for the person who's just sitting there. And then you introduce AI to such a population. Okay, what if something bad happens? And it will happen. It's bound to happen. When you put all your, there's a saying, right? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But that's what society is doing. That's what humanity is doing. Everybody's celebrating AI. And there was a line back in 1999 when The Matrix, the first of the trilogy, came out. The character in it, Morpheus, turns to Neo and says, and is recapping what has happened during the last 200 or so years. And the whole planet is devastated. And he says, we marveled 200 years ago when AI came out. And the actor says, you mean artificial intelligence? He says, yes. We marveled at our creation, that this is going to save us. And it's so ironic, eerily ironic, that it's almost the same lingo, the same conversation piece that's being, swapped around by these people in the media, in powerful positions. No, AI is not going to save us. Our humanity will. Don't look for AI for your humanity. How you look at each other, how you treat your son. People are so disconnected from their own bodies. We're always projecting our attention outward. We are looking for the world to come and tell us how to feel, what to believe, how to think. The news is going to tell me how I'm supposed to feel about you. There's something wrong, grossly wrong about that picture, with this picture. We don't know how dangerous this is, because in a society where it's already disconnected, you bring in AI, disconnected humanity that is disconnected from reality already, which means disconnected from being a human being. The person is disconnected from being, doesn't know how to be a man. A man doesn't know how to be a man. You have all this confusing information out there. So-called biologists or scientists come out of the woodwork and it could be many genders. No, there can't be. Okay? They're just two. You have to be an absolute moron, an idiot, to completely overlook, go and completely avoid looking at reality. And whatever data they might produce is just cherry picking. Well, there's in monkeys, there's this and that, there's this, there's over there in history, and then no. You're just cherry picking to fit your own idiotic agendas. Confusing children. Children don't know. They're being taught to become confused. So people are being uprooted, eradicated, completely forced to forget our ancestry as human beings for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years of evolution. A woman doesn't know how to be a woman. A man doesn't know how to be a man. What happens if the lights go out? How many of us know how to make fire? No, there's not going to be any matches. Okay? No magnesium, plates for you to scrape and create sparks and all that. None of that. How will you manage to create fire? Light. How about obtaining water when there's none? These are basic skills that every child should know. Every person should know. We need to know how to protect ourselves. There's animals, around us. We live in this utopian state, and it's all fake. That's what virtual means. But there's nothing fake about being virtuous. Okay? Nothing fake about that. So, in a world where we're becoming more and more desensitized with the suffering of others, from using our hands to build, to be parents to our children, that's the only way to create decent human beings, decent families. And not look to the state, not look towards the state which, through the media or whatever they're propagating, whatever nonsense they're putting out, telling us what is right and what is wrong. No, leave the family alone. Leave the parents, not partners. Leave the mother and father alone to raise their children, the boys and girls. It's not a birthing parent. It's the mother. Okay? It's the mother. Without mothers, there's no life. Without fathers, there's no life either. Because you need them both. Otherwise, the children will become handicapped. And that's a term that we've stopped using. Differently abled and all that kind of nonsensical terms that these, language police have come up with. Lifeless words. So what's the purpose for me to be doing this should be a question that's on your mind whenever you're using or about to use ChatGPT. Okay? If it's something that, you're rushing, you don't have enough time, you are able to do it, just like making bread, for example. In order for you to make decent bread, you need to get some flour, some yeast, hopefully not non-bleached flour, and the right ingredients, and then you allow now the dough to be fermenting for some time. And then you take it out and you make whatever you want to make out of it. Now, what if you're short on time? What do? Well, there's the baker over there. Okay, you have some money. They need the money to run their business and to keep the community well fed, well supported. So you go, instead of having to do all that work yourself, you go and buy a loaf of bread. And now you're saying hello to your baker. They're saying hello to you. You put some money in his pocket. The workers are fed. You are fed with the bread that you just bought, a good piece of bread. And everybody goes home happy. That's the old-fashioned way of using AI, I would say, because you can make the bread, okay? You're not stealing the bread, so make sure you're not stealing the bread. Here, of course, I'm using it as a metaphor for usage of ChatGPT or any other similar program. Remember, you have to be the last word on it. And last word coming from you has to be strongly anchored in virtue. Okay? What would happen if you wrote this very important article, or you've done this report that took you years to make, with the research and this and that, all this data you gathered and sifting through it to make sense out of it, come out of it? Okay. And somehow, because it's an open system, the cloud, etc., right? And how would you feel if somebody slipped through the cracks, through the loopholes, digital loopholes, and through invisible fingers and tentacles came in and pulled out some very important data from your own never seen before report, and now somebody has access to it? Don't you call that stealing? It should be called stealing. It's like somebody entering into your safety deposit box in the bank, and then next time you go to check it, it's not there. It's missing. Well, the same thing. Data is like that. Digital data is so they can just copy and paste it. It's gone. So it's a very, very slippery slope we're treading on. An easy terrain and atmosphere to become careless and lazy and not taking responsibility for the work being done. Of course, you can always augment, you can support your work by checking in to see. Oftentimes you need to check the work that the AI is putting. Again, it's people that are making this, okay? To test it, ChatGPT, I've actually asked it certain questions. And it would come up with different numbers, different things, and and I would ask it, are you sure this is what it means? And then guess what? 9 times out of 10, it came back and said, oh, you're right, that's a good catch. It's interesting how it even uses like phrases that we humans use. Oh yes, thanks for correcting that. Yes, you're actually accurate in your da-da-da-da-da, and then it would give you the opposite, the thing that should have been. And sometimes I remarked back and saying, aren't you supposed to be all wise and this and that? And then, it's a work in progress, just like a human. So don't be surprised when your AI keeps lying to you. And by the way, some people have asked me or made suggestions. Oh, Bante, maybe you should, because you are always translating and always recording, and how do you do this? Like, have you ever thought of letting AI translate the suttas for you? And I said, absolutely not. This is a place where I draw the line. My goal is to retranslate the suttas. For as long of a life I have, in doing so, I will do that. And if I can't complete it, I can't complete it. But I will do my best in completing as many as I can. But I'm never going to trust AI to be, air quotes, I'm doing that right now for listeners, to let AI figure out the contextual elements of the suttas or what the Buddha might have meant by this. Because I already see enough of a debacle in other translations and translators today. There are an extent, that are around. And I do know of other translators who have been using them, unfortunately. That's not supposed to happen. Monastics, I mean. Some. And it's not an honorable thing to be doing. To be, quote unquote, ahead of the game or type of a thing. No. We need to understand why we are daring to approach the suttas, touching the suttas. It has to be done with the purest of intentions. There's no ego involved. So no, you don't need to go and write 740 pages of introduction for this Nikaya, and then you look over after the introduction portion, and you look desperately looking for the suttas, and all you get to see is ellipses after ellipses and chunks of suttas missing. Sometimes entire suttas aren't there, just the title of the sutta. Meanwhile, the whole book, the thick book, is supposed to be on this Nikaya. That's deplorable. So whatever repetitions I have been making, which was the initial starting point for me, because I had gotten sick and tired of having to read through sutta pages after pages where I just saw within parentheses or brackets, oh, check this sutta, this section, that portion of that sutta, you go to that sutta, and then you have to look for another sutta because that chunk of the sutta is missing because it's repeated somewhere else in another sutta, just like it says in this sutta. It's sad. So AI, I think, shouldn't even be used to fill up those gaps either for these lazy translators. That's what they are. Okay? Somehow they're not being lazy when it comes to their presentation of an introduction to such a book. And it doesn't need that type of an introduction because the suttas themselves are perfect. The way they came out of Lord Buddha's lips and the Arya Savakas. They're perfect. So as little of a footprint as possible. Only if it's absolutely essential, that's when you put in your literally 2 cents worth ideas in there somewhere and get out of there as soon as possible and get going with the sutta translation. That's what makes a translation. Not leaving it blank or empty and ... here, ... there. Come on. So AI cannot be used for that either. That's how I see it. Every single one of the translations I do, especially when it comes to the recording, I record by reciting that section again. So it doesn't get to be it's like edited, get a crop of that on the video program, whatever, I'm using, and then copy paste that section as a repetition. Oh no, no, no. Every single word is being recited because that's the least I can do. This is the Dhamma. This is not a forum or a platform for me to shine. No. No. So, remember, wholesome versus unwholesome. Even the Dhamma, therefore, can be translated, the teachings can be translated in an unwholesome way versus wholesome. So if it's the same with, if it happens with the Dhamma, of course the ChatGPT can be used in a wholesome way as well. That's how I would approach it. So ask yourself, what is the purpose for me to be doing this? Meaning, to be using this. If it's helping you to prosper, to make a living, to put food on the table, but again, you're not pretending to be, for example, there are people who are trying to put out language books, okay? Meanwhile, they can't speak the language. I know this because I am currently learning a few languages. And I was forced to have to obtain some books that are not available. And then you see them online, so I have to study those books because they sound promising. And then when you get them in your hands and you read and you see that this person is like, this is not a person, first of all. There's no logic behind this. And you can tell. And errors are there that it shouldn't have been there. And then you find out that it's a business model that many people are using ChatGPT to generate such books, technical books, things like that they have no clue about. But they're just giving instructions, and AI is preparing it. They create a PDF of it. And they ask the ChatGPT to make a cover, back cover, jacket, etc., glossary, index, and then they put it up, let's say, on Amazon. You also have the facilities to have Amazon print books for you, apparently. And all of a sudden, you're in business. Amazon gets its cut. You get your cut as the author. As the author. Meanwhile, you are absolutely oblivious of the topic. That is stealing. So make sure that this is in your arena. This is going to help you and the world around you. Remember that example of the baking of the bread. I think that's a good image. And I'll stop here. Sukhya Hotu.